He had everything money could buy and everything blood could steal. Armored SUVs, tailored suits, and a last name that made bankers sweat and politicians bend. But inside the mansion's marble halls, he was failing, drowning in his father's silence, suffocating under the weight of an empire he never asked to inherit. Everyone had written him off. His professors who took the bribes anyway, his father who called him soft, even himself. Until one night in the quietest corner of the family library, a girl, a black girl in a maid's uniform that everyone looked through like glass, pointed at his failing grade and said something that shattered him more than any threat ever had. He thought she was just part of the furniture, invisible background his father paid to disappear. He had no idea she was about to dismantle everything he thought power meant. Jeremy showed up the next night because he had nowhere else to go. The library was dark except for a single desk lamp, and Anita was already there, sitting in his father's chair like she owned it. She had a stack of books beside her, old textbooks with cracked spines that looked nothing like the pristine volumes lining the shelves. "You came," she said, not looking up from the page she was reading. "I don't have a choice." Jeremy dropped his leather bag on the table. The failed economics paper slid out, that brutal red 18 mocking him even in the dim light. Anita finally looked at him, and there was something in her eyes that made him uncomfortable. Not fear, not respect, something closer to pity. Everyone has a choice, you just don't like yours. "Look, if you're going to lecture me..." 18 out of 100. She picked up his paper, held it to the light like a specimen. "You wrote 3 pages about supply and demand and managed to be wrong about all of it. That's almost impressive." Heat rushed to Jeremy's face. "If you're just going to insult me, I can get that from my father for free." "Your father insults you because you're failing to be what he is. I'm insulting you because you're failing to be anything at all." Anita set the paper down, leaned back in the chair. "Tell me something, Jeremy Jones. When you wrote this essay, did you actually read the assignment, or did you just assume your name would carry you through?" The silence stretched. Jeremy wanted to lie, but something about the way she watched it made it impossible. "I skimmed it," he admitted. "You skimmed it," she nodded slowly. "And when your tutor quit, did you try to understand the material yourself, or did you just wait for your father to hire another one? What's your point?" "My point is that you've spent 17 years having things done for you, and now you're surprised that you can't do them yourself." Anita stood, walked around the desk until she was close enough that he could smell lavender soap, simple and clean. "You want to know the secret? There is no secret. There's just work. The kind of work people like me do every day while people like you pretend we're invisible." Jeremy felt something crack inside him, some wall he'd been hiding behind. "Then why are you here? If I'm so hopeless, why waste your time?" For the first time, Anita smiled. It wasn't kind, but it wasn't cruel either. "Because I'd been watching you for 3 years, Jeremy Jones, and underneath all that expensive cologne and designer ignorance, I think there might be someone worth saving. But we're going to find out together whether I'm right or just another fool who believed in the wrong person." She pushed one of her old textbooks across the desk. The cover was held together with tape. "Chapter 3. Read it. Actually read it. Tomorrow night you're going to explain it to me in your own words, and if you try to fake it, I'll know and we're done." The cut came at breakfast, delivered with the same casual brutality his father used for everything else. Andrew Jones didn't even look up from his newspaper when he said, "Your cards are canceled. The Porsche's gone. Your allowance stops today." Jeremy's fork clattered against fine china. "What?" "You heard me." His father turned the page, scanning stock reports like he hadn't just detonated his son's entire world. "You want to live under my roof? You'll earn it. Pass your classes or get a job. I don't care which." "Dad, You need nothing." Andrew finally looked at him, and his eyes were cold as lake ice. "Everything you have, I gave you. And what have you done with it? Embarrassed me. Embarrassed the family name. So now we see what you're made of when the safety net disappears." Jeremy's mother said nothing. She never did. She just sipped her coffee and looked out the window like she was somewhere else entirely. By noon, Jeremy understood what poverty felt like for the rich. His phone still worked, but only because it was paid through the end of the month. His closet still held thousands of dollars in clothes, but they suddenly felt like a museum exhibit. He had everything and nothing simultaneously. He tried to get lunch at his usual spot downtown, the Italian place where they knew his name. His card declined. The waiter's smile went tight with embarrassment for both of them. "I can come back," Jeremy stammered. "I'll bring cash." But he had no cash. He'd never needed cash. He walked home, 3 miles through neighborhoods that gradually shifted from pristine to merely nice to something harder. People looked at him different without the car, without the usual armor of visible wealth. Just another kid in expensive clothes he'd probably wear until they fell apart now. The mansion felt different when he got back. Bigger, emptier. He'd always known it was too large, but now he understood why. All that space was meant to insulate the Jones family from the world, from consequence, from reality, and his father had just shoved him through the airlock. Sophia was cleaning the hallway when he came in, Anita's mother. She glanced at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. Pity, maybe, or recognition. "There's leftover pasta in the kitchen, if you're hungry." It was the first time anyone in the house had acknowledged that he might need something as basic as food. Jeremy nodded, couldn't quite find words. He'd walked past Sophia 1,000 times and never really thought about what it meant that she knew where the food was, that she probably made it, that she existed in this house in a way he never had to think about. Until now. Now he was standing in the same hallway, and for the first time in his life, Jeremy Jones felt the floor beneath his feet.
Jeremy found Anita in the library that night, but this time he wasn't sitting down. He was standing in front of her like a defendant waiting for verdict, and the desperation must have shown on his face, because she closed her book slowly, deliberately. "I read the chapter," he said. "Good for you." "I mean, I really read it. 3 times. I took notes." He pulled out crumpled pages from his pocket, his handwriting cramped and uneven. "I didn't understand all of it, but I tried." Anita glanced at the notes, her expression unreadable. "So you want a gold star?" "I want you to teach me." The words came out harder than he intended, almost angry. "Everything, whatever you know, however you learned it. I need—" He stopped, swallowed. "I can't go back to what I was." "What you were is all you've ever been." "Then help me be something else." Jeremy pulled out the chair across from her, sat down before she could dismiss him. "You said there might be someone worth saving. Were you lying, or were you just testing me?" Something flickered across Anita's face. Surprise, maybe. She set down her pen, folded her hands like she was considering a business proposal. "If I do this, there are rules." "Fine. You don't even know what they are yet." "I don't care." Jeremy leaned forward. "My father cut me off today, took everything. And you know what I realized walking home? I have no idea how to exist in the world without money protecting me. I can't even buy lunch. I'm 17 years old and I'm useless." Most people figure that out earlier. Most people don't have Andrew Jones for a father. Jeremy met her eyes. "But you're right. I've been hiding behind his name my whole life. So tell me your rules." Anita studied him for a long moment, like she was looking for cracks in his resolve. "Rule 1. When you're in this library with me, you're not Jeremy Jones. You're not the Mafia prince or the rich kid or the failure. You're just a student, and I'm just a teacher. Your name doesn't exist here." "Okay." Rule 2. I'm not here to make you feel better about yourself. I'm here to make you smarter. That means when you're wrong, I tell you. When you're being lazy, I call it out. No ego, no excuses." "I can handle that." Rule 3. Her voice went quieter, sharper. "If you waste my time, if you show up unprepared or half-committed, we're done. I'm using hours I could spend sleeping or studying for myself. This isn't charity. This is an investment, and I need to know you're worth it." Jeremy looked at the girl across from him, the maid's daughter, who somehow held all the power in the room, and he felt something he hadn't felt in years.
Hope, maybe. Or fear. Probably both. "I'll be worth it," he said. Anita opened her textbook. "Then let's start from zero." The lessons happened after midnight. When Andrew was either asleep or out conducting business Jeremy tried not to think about. Anita would slip into the library through the servants' entrance, arms loaded with books that looked like they'd survived a war. Dog-eared textbooks, annotated novels, workbooks filled with her mother's handwriting from decades ago. "My mother came to this country with nothing but an education," Anita said the first night, spreading the books across the mahogany table. "She had a master's degree in literature from Lagos. Here, she cleans toilets. You want to know what real power looks like? It's knowledge they can't take from you, even when they take everything else." Jeremy picked up one of the books, a history text from the 90s. The margins were covered in notes, questions, observations written in careful script. "Your mother wrote all this?" "Every page. She taught herself 3 languages in this house, while your family pretended she was furniture." Anita opened to a marked chapter. "Now pay attention. This isn't about memorizing facts. It's about understanding what they mean." The first week, Anita taught him how to actually read, not just move his eyes across words, but to question them, challenge them, see what was hidden underneath. They dissected his economics textbook line by line, and she showed him how every theory had an agenda, every argument had a bias. "Your professors aren't teaching you to think," she said, tapping a passage about market efficiency. "They're teaching you to accept, to see the world the way powerful people want you to see it. That's what makes you dangerous to your father, you know, the moment you start actually thinking." By the second week, Jeremy stopped bringing his expensive textbooks. Anita's battered collection taught him more in hours than a semester of private tutoring ever had. She made him write essays by hand, no computer to autocorrect his thoughts. She made him argue positions he disagreed with until he understood them. She made him read between the lines. "Why did the author choose this word instead of that one?" she'd ask. "What is this politician not saying? What does this economic policy actually do versus what it claims to do?" Jeremy started seeing patterns everywhere, in his father's carefully chosen phrases, in the way news reports framed stories, in the entire architecture of the world he'd grown up in without questioning. One night, 3 weeks in, he looked up from an essay he'd just finished, truly finished, and found Anita watching him with something almost like pride. "What?" he asked. "You're different," she said simply. "The way you hold yourself, the way you think. It's like watching someone wake up." Jeremy glanced at his reflection in the dark window. Same face, same expensive haircut. But she was right. Something fundamental had shifted. He wasn't just memorizing anymore. He was understanding. He was thinking. And for the first time in his life, Jeremy Jones was genuinely afraid of what that might mean. Jeremy made the mistake of asking the question at dinner. It had been building for weeks, burning in his chest every time his father came home late with that particular expression, the one that meant someone had learned a hard lesson about crossing Andrew Jones. "Dad, what do you actually produce?" The dining room went silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. His mother's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Andrew slowly set down his wine glass, the crystal catching the chandelier light. "Excuse me?" "I've been studying economics." Jeremy kept his voice steady, though his heart was hammering. "Every business produces something. Goods, services, value. But what do we actually make? We provide security, order. We fill gaps the government can't or won't address. We sell fear." The words came out before Jeremy could stop them. "We extract money from people who are afraid of what happens if they don't pay. That's not production, that's just extraction." His father's eyes went cold and flat, the look that made prosecutors drop cases and witnesses disappear. "You've been spending too much time with books and not enough in the real world. Maybe the real world isn't what you told me it was." Andrew stood slowly, his chair scraping against imported marble. He walked around the table until he was standing behind Jeremy, one hand heavy on his son's shoulder. Let me tell you about the real world, boy. The real world is power. Pure and simple. You either have it or you don't. You either take it or someone takes from you. But that's the illusion, isn't it? Jeremy's voice was shaking now, but he couldn't stop. Anita's lessons had opened something in him that wouldn't close. You've convinced yourself that fear equals power, that control equals strength, but you're just as trapped as everyone you think you control. You can't stop. You can't change. You can't even have a conversation with your own son without threatening him. The slap came fast, hard enough to snap Jeremy's head sideways. His mother gasped. The room spun. You will not disrespect me in my own house. Andrew's voice was barely a whisper, which somehow made it worse. I built this empire from nothing. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me? With philosophy from some book? Jeremy touched his burning cheek, tasted copper, but he looked his father in the eye. You gave me everything except a reason to want it. Andrew stared at his son like he was seeing a stranger. Then he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the marble hall. Jeremy sat alone at the table, his mother already retreating to her room, and realized he'd just crossed a line he could never uncross. The son who questioned was more dangerous than the son who failed, and his father knew it. Somewhere in the house, Anita was probably finishing her own dinner in the kitchen, unaware that her lessons had just started a war.
Marcus Calvetti had been waiting for this moment his entire life. The Calvettis and the Joneses had been circling each other for years, two crime families locked in a cold war that occasionally turned hot. And now Marcus had something better than territory or contracts. He had ammunition. He'd come to the Joneses' estate for one of those tense business dinners where everyone smiled with their mouths and threatened with their eyes. While the adults talked in the dining room, Marcus had wandered, bored, looking for something to steal or break. That's when he'd heard voices coming from the library. Through the cracked door, he saw them. Jeremy Jones, crown prince of the Jones Empire, bent over a book while the maid's daughter, that black girl in the uniform, pointed at pages and explained concepts like she was the teacher and he was the student. Jeremy was taking notes. Actually taking notes, nodding, asking questions with this earnest expression that made Marcus want to laugh. He pulled out his phone and started recording. So the social contract, Jeremy was saying, is basically the idea that we give up some freedom in exchange for security and order? That's the surface, but think deeper. Who decides what freedom gets traded? Who defines the order? Your father thinks he's providing order, but he's really just... Marcus had seen enough. He backed away carefully, checking the footage. Crystal clear, perfect audio. Jeremy Jones, the Mafia heir, getting tutored by the help, learning philosophy that questioned everything his family stood for. This was gold. He posted it that night. No context, just the raw video with a caption. Guess who needs the maid to teach him how to read? By morning, it had spread through their entire social circle, the private academy group chats, the country club kids, every son and daughter of every crime family, legitimate business, and old money fortune in the city. The comments were vicious. Jones can't even pass without help from the staff. Maybe she's teaching him how to clean toilets for when Daddy finally kicks him out. This is what happens when you're too soft for the family business. Jeremy's phone exploded with notifications. He ignored them through breakfast, but his father didn't. Andrew sat at the table, scrolling through his own phone, his jaw clenched so tight Jeremy could hear his teeth grinding. Explain this to me, Andrew said, turning the screen around. Jeremy watched himself on video, looking earnest and young and completely vulnerable, learning about social contracts from a girl his father paid minimum wage. I've been studying, Jeremy said quietly. You've been making us look weak. Andrew's voice could cut steel. The Calvettis are already calling, asking if I know my son is being educated by the help. Do you understand what you've done? Jeremy looked at his father, then at the phone, then at the frozen image of Anita's face, patient and proud and completely unaware she'd just been dragged into a war she never asked to fight. Yes, he said, I'm learning to think. Andrew found the essays when he was looking for ammunition. That's what he called it when he searched Jeremy's room, tearing through drawers and closets looking for evidence of further betrayal. What he found was worse than drugs or weapons or any typical teenage rebellion. He found intelligence. A stack of papers, each one covered in Anita's red pen. Jeremy's essays transformed from failures into actual thoughts. Margin notes that said, "Good analysis," and "Push this further," and "Now you're thinking." Dates going back 6 weeks. Evidence of systematic education happening right under his nose. Andrew brought them to dinner like exhibits in a trial. "Sophia," he called. His voice echoed through the mansion. "Get in here. Bring your daughter." They came together, Sophia's face already pale because she knew that tone. Anita walked behind her mother, chin up, shoulders back, and Jeremy felt his stomach drop because he knew what was coming and he couldn't stop it. Andrew threw the essays on the table. They scattered across the china and crystal like accusations. "How long has this been going on?" Sophia opened her mouth, but Anita spoke first. 2 months. 2 months. 2 months my employee has been filling my son's head with ideas that undermine everything this family stands for. Andrew picked up one essay, read aloud. "True power comes not from fear, but from understanding systems others take for granted. Did you write this poison?" "I wrote the comments," Anita said. "Jeremy wrote the essay." "Don't." Andrew's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't act like you're doing him a favor. You're staff. You're paid to clean and stay invisible, not to play teacher with my son." "Someone had to," Anita said quietly. "He was drowning." The slap happened so fast Jeremy almost missed it. Andrew's hand across Anita's face, the crack of it louder than gunfire in the quiet room. Sophia screamed. Jeremy was on his feet before he knew he was moving. "Don't touch her." Andrew turned, and for a moment father and son stood facing each other across the wreckage of dinner. "You're choosing her? This girl who's been using you to feel important? She's been teaching me to think, something you never did because you need me stupid and obedient." Jeremy's hands were shaking. "She showed me what you really are, not powerful, just scared. Scared of what happens if people stop being afraid of you." "Get out," Andrew said to Sophia and Anita. "Both of you. Fired. I want you out of this house tonight." "Dad!" "And you," Andrew pointed at Jeremy, "you can go with them if you love her so much. See how far your philosophy gets you on the street." Jeremy looked at Anita, her cheek red from his father's hand. At Sophia, 20 years of service ending in one brutal moment. At the essays scattered across the table, proof that he'd finally learned something real. "Maybe I need to lose everything," Jeremy said slowly, "to find out who I am." He picked up the essays, walked past his father, and followed Anita and her mother out the door. The gala was Andrew's power move, his way of reasserting dominance after the humiliation of his son's rebellion. Every crime family in the city packed into the Jones ballroom, along with the politicians they owned and the businessmen who laundered their money. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, men in tuxedos discussing violence like it was portfolio diversification. Jeremy wasn't supposed to be there. He'd been living in Sophia's sister's apartment for 3 weeks, sleeping on a couch, working a dishwashing job Anita had helped him find. But Andrew had sent word through intermediaries. Come to the gala, apologize publicly, come home. Last chance. Jeremy came, but not to apologize. He walked in wearing his father's tuxedo, the one that still hung in his old closet. He looked like he belonged. That was important. He waited until Andrew was in the middle of a toast, surrounded by allies, watched by everyone who mattered in his world. Then Jeremy took the stage. "Excuse me," he said into the microphone. The room went silent. His father's face drained of color. "I know I'm not scheduled to speak, but I have something to say about power." Andrew started moving toward the stage, but his associates held him back, curious now, wanting to see how this played out.
My father taught me that power comes from fear, from control, from making people believe you're untouchable. Jeremy's voice was steady, clearer than it had ever been. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Look at this room. Look at what fear built. It's beautiful. Murmurs of approval. Andrew relaxed slightly. But here's what my father didn't teach me. He didn't teach me how to read a balance sheet, how to understand economic systems, how to think critically about the difference between influence and intimidation. Jeremy pulled out his essays, the red-marked pages. He didn't teach me any of that because he doesn't know it himself. None of you do. The room shifted, uncomfortable now. You know what's funny? The smartest person I've ever met worked for my family. Anita Williams, the Maid's daughter. She has more intellectual power in her left hand than this entire room combined. And we treated her like furniture because that's what we do. We mistake visibility for value. We think money equals intelligence. We're intellectually bankrupt and too arrogant to know it. Jeremy, his father's voice was a warning. I'm done, Dad. Done pretending this life is something to aspire to. Done watching brilliant people be invisible while mediocre men pretend they're kings. Jeremy looked directly at his father. You wanted me to be strong? This is strong. Walking away from everything you built because I finally understand it's built on nothing. He set the microphone down and walked off the stage. The room erupted, voices overlapping. But Jeremy didn't hear them. He pushed through the crowd, through the door, into the night air. Anita was waiting outside, leaning against a bus stop. She'd watched through the window. That was stupid, she said. Probably. Also brave. Jeremy smiled. You taught me the difference. It took Jeremy 3 years to build something real. 3 years of community college while working 2 jobs. 3 years of learning how money actually moved, legally, through grants and nonprofits and social enterprises. 3 years of Anita finishing her own degree while helping him navigate a world neither of them had been prepared for. The Jones Institute opened on a gray Tuesday morning in the building that used to house one of his father's front companies. Jeremy had bought it for almost nothing when the feds finally caught up with Andrew's empire, seizing assets, freezing accounts, dismantling the careful architecture of fear his father had spent decades building. Andrew took a plea deal, 5 years, minimum security. He'd be out in 3 with good behavior. But the kingdom was gone. The Institute was everything the Jones empire wasn't. Transparent, legal, focused on education for kids who'd been written off by everyone else. Kids from neighborhoods where Jeremy's father used to collect protection money. Kids like Anita, brilliant and invisible, who just needed someone to see them. Anita ran the curriculum. Jeremy handled funding and operations. Sophia managed the building, finally using her master's degree to teach literature to students who'd never been told their thoughts mattered. Jeremy was reviewing scholarship applications when the receptionist buzzed. Someone here to see you. Says he's your father. Andrew looked smaller in civilian clothes. Prison had softened something in him, or maybe just revealed what was always underneath the suits and the violence. He stood in the doorway of Jeremy's office, taking in the walls covered with student artwork, the mission statement framed behind the desk. You actually did it, Andrew said. Did you think I wouldn't? I thought you'd fail. I thought without the name, without the money, you'd realize I was right about how the world works. Andrew sat down slowly, like his bones hurt. I was wrong. Jeremy set down his pen. Why are you here, Dad? To see what you built, to understand what I lost. Andrew looked at his hands, the same hands that had slapped his son, that had struck Anita. I had everything, real power, I thought, and I lost it all. You had nothing, and you built this. I had Anita. I had people who believed in something beyond fear. I know. Andrew's voice cracked. I watched the news coverage of your opening, saw her speech, saw those kids talking about what this place means to them, and He stopped, wiped his eyes roughly. I didn't expect to cry in prison watching my son do something I never could, be someone I never was. Jeremy felt something loosen in his chest, some knot he'd been carrying for years. You can be part of this when you get out, if you want. Not running it, not controlling it, just helping. Why would you let me? Because Anita taught me that people can learn, even people who spent their whole lives being wrong. Jeremy stood, walked around the desk. Even you, Dad, if you're willing to start from zero. Andrew looked up at his son, and for the first time Jeremy could remember, his father looked genuinely humble. I don't know how. That's okay, Jeremy smiled. I know someone who's really good at teaching. Through the window, Anita was leading a class, her voice carrying through the walls, teaching another generation of invisible kids that knowledge was the only power no one could take away.
Jeremy stood at the window watching Anita teach, his father beside him learning what humility looked like, and he understood finally what she'd been trying to tell him that first night in the library. Power wasn't in the name you inherited or the fear you inspired. It was in what you knew, what you built, and who you lifted up along the way. The Jones Institute would educate thousands of students over the years. Some would become lawyers, doctors, engineers. Others would become teachers themselves, passing on what they'd learned. All of them would carry forward a simple truth, that the most dangerous thing you can do to an unjust system is to think clearly about it. Andrew Jones served his time and came back changed. Not perfect, never perfect, but willing to learn. He spent his remaining years teaching a class on ethics, using his own failures as the textbook. This is what happens, he'd tell students, when you mistake control for leadership. And Anita Williams became Dr. Anita Williams, writing books on educational philosophy that would influence reform movements across the country. But she never forgot where she started, never forgot the invisible work her mother did, never let anyone forget that brilliance lives everywhere if you're willing to see it. Jeremy's greatest achievement wasn't the Institute. It was learning that you don't have to accept the legacy you're born into. You can build your own. The moral, true power isn't inherited, it's earned. It doesn't come from what people fear you'll do, but from what you know and who you choose to become. The bravest thing you can do is question everything you were taught, especially by the people who love you. And the smartest thing you can do is learn from those the world has taught you to overlook. Don't forget to like this video if Jeremy's transformation inspired you. Subscribe for more stories about courage and change. Comment below with who taught you the most important lesson in your life. And share this with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to start thinking for yourself.